One, this is Julia from English Without Limit, and today we are going to practice English together. Let's start with a story you might enjoy. Yesterday, I woke up early because I wanted to go to the market. I made a cup of coffee and had a small breakfast. Then I put on my jacket and walked to the bus stop. On the way, I saw my neighbor walking her dog. I said hello to her, and she smiled. At the bus stop, I met a friend. We talked about our plans for the weekend. The bus came and we got on together. On the bus, I listened to music and watched people outside. Some children were playing in the park, and an old man was feeding birds. It was a calm morning. When I reached the market, it was already busy. People were buying fruits and vegetables, and the smell of fresh bread came from the bakery. I bought some apples, tomatoes, and a loaf of bread. I saw a woman selling flowers. The flowers were colorful and beautiful. I decided to buy a small bouquet. While paying, I asked her how much the flowers cost. She smiled and said $5. I gave her the money and thanked her. After shopping, I walked back home. I felt happy because I had fresh food and flowers for my kitchen. When I arrived home, I put everything away and made a small salad for lunch. Eating the salad, I thought about how small things like a morning walk and fresh flowers can make a day better. Then I cleaned the kitchen and relaxed with a cup of tea. I listened to a podcast in English to practice my listening skills. The day was simple but very pleasant. Later, I called my cousin to ask about her day. She told me she had a busy morning at work, but she also went for a short walk. We laughed and shared small stories about our friends. Talking to her made me feel cheerful. In the evening, I decided to go for a short walk in my neighborhood. The sun was setting, and the sky had beautiful colors. Some people were jogging, and some were walking their dogs. I walked slowly, enjoying the fresh air. I saw a little boy playing with a ball. His mother was sitting on a bench watching him. I smiled and remembered when I used to play in the park as a child. After the walk, I returned home and made dinner. I cooked rice and vegetables and had a quiet meal while listening to soft music. After dinner, I cleaned the dishes and prepared my clothes for the next day. Before sleeping, I read a short story in English. Reading helps me improve my vocabulary and understand new expressions. Finally, I went to bed feeling relaxed and ready for a good night's sleep. Today was simple, but I learned new words, practiced English listening, and enjoyed small, happy moments in my day. After a restful night, I woke up feeling refreshed and ready to start a new day. I checked my phone first thing in the morning to see if I had any messages or notifications. My friend Sarah had sent me a message asking if I wanted to meet her at the cafe near the library. I quickly replied, "Yes, I'd love to meet you." After sending the message, I made a simple breakfast. I had a slice of toast with peanut butter and a glass of orange juice. While eating, I looked out the window. The sun was shining and the birds were singing. It was a beautiful morning, perfect for going out. I decided to wear something comfortable. I chose a light blue shirt, jeans, and sneakers. Before leaving, I packed a small bag with my wallet, phone, and a notebook. I also grabbed a reusable water bottle because I wanted to stay hydrated while walking. I left my apartment and walked down the street. The neighborhood was quiet with only a few people on the sidewalks. I passed by a bakery and the smell of fresh bread and pastries filled the air. I thought about buying a croissant, but I decided to wait until I met Sarah. When I approached the cafe, I noticed a street musician playing the guitar. His music was soft and calming. A few people were standing around listening. I stopped for a moment to enjoy the melody. The musician smiled at me, and I smiled back. Music has a way of making ordinary mornings feel special. When I arrived at the cafe, Sarah was already sitting at a table near the window. She waved, and I waved back. I walked over and greeted her. "Hi, Sarah. How are you today?" I asked. "Hi, Julia. I'm good, thanks. And you?" she replied. "I'm feeling great. It's such a nice morning," I said. We ordered our drinks. Sarah chose a cappuccino and I chose green tea. While waiting for our drinks, we started talking about our week. Sarah told me about her new project at work. She said it was challenging but exciting. I listened carefully and asked questions about her tasks and deadlines. Then I shared some stories about my own week. I told her about the new book I started reading and how I was practicing English listening to podcasts every morning. Our drinks arrived and we sipped slowly while continuing our conversation. Sarah mentioned that she had started a small garden on her balcony. She grew tomatoes, basil, and some flowers. I was impressed and asked her how she managed to take care of it while working full time. She explained her routine and shared tips for growing plants in small spaces. I took notes in my notebook because I wanted to try something similar in my own apartment. We laughed and joked about how plants sometimes need more attention than people. After finishing our drinks, we decided to take a short walk in the nearby park. The park was filled with people jogging, walking their dogs, and children playing. The trees were tall and green, and the air smelled fresh. We walked slowly, enjoying the scenery. Sarah pointed out a small pond with ducks swimming. We watched them for a few minutes, noticing how calm and peaceful the water looked. I took some photos with my phone to remember this moment. As we continued walking, we passed a small bookstore. I suggested we go inside and browse for a while. The store was cozy, with shelves filled with books of all genres. The smell of old books was comforting. Sarah found a novel she had wanted to read, and I picked up a book about English grammar. I flipped through the pages, reading a few sentences aloud quietly to practice pronunciation. I love moments like this because they combine learning and enjoyment. After browsing for a while, we decided to leave the bookstore and sit on a nearby bench to rest. On the bench, we talked about our hobbies and plans for the upcoming weekend. Sarah mentioned that she wanted to try painting, and I suggested we could go to a local art workshop together. She liked the idea and promised to check the schedule. We also discussed movies and TV shows we were watching. Sarah recommended a new series, and I promised to watch the first episode that evening. Our conversation flowed naturally with laughter and shared ideas. I realized that spending time with friends not only feels good, but also helps improve English skills through real conversation. After our walk, it was almost lunchtime. We decided to go to a small restaurant nearby. The place was known for its healthy salads and sandwiches. I ordered a chicken salad, and Sarah ordered a vegetable wrap. While waiting for the food, we continued practicing English by describing our surroundings. We talked about the colors of the trees, the sounds we could hear, and the people passing by. It felt like a fun exercise because it helped me notice details I usually ignore. Our lunch arrived and we ate slowly, enjoying the flavors. Sarah talked about her plans for traveling next month. She was going to visit a friend in another city. I asked questions about the trip and she explained her itinerary, including places she wanted to see and food she wanted to try. I shared my own dream destinations and talked about a city I had visited last year. It was interesting to compare our experiences and preferences. After lunch, we decided to walk back toward the cafe area. On the way, we saw a small street market with fresh fruits, vegetables, and handmade crafts. The market was lively, with vendors calling out to attract customers. I bought some fresh strawberries and a small handmade notebook. Sarah bought some colorful scarves. We carried our items carefully as we continued walking. When we reached the cafe area, it was time to say goodbye. I thank Sarah for a wonderful morning. I really enjoyed our walk and conversation. It was fun and relaxing, I said. She smiled and replied, "Me too, Julia. Let's do this again soon." We hugged briefly and promised to meet next week. I walked back to my apartment, feeling happy and grateful for the day. Back at home, I unpacked the items I bought from the market and street market. I washed the strawberries and put them in a bowl. I also placed the notebook on my desk to start writing down my thoughts and English practice notes. I spent some time reading the book I had bought in the bookstore. Each sentence I read helped me practice pronunciation and understanding. Later, I listened to another English podcast to continue improving my listening skills. In the evening, I decided to cook a simple dinner. I made pasta with vegetables and a small portion of chicken. While cooking, I played soft music in the background. I noticed that cooking while listening to English podcasts helped me learn new vocabulary related to food and cooking. After dinner, I cleaned the kitchen and organized my notes for English practice. Before going to bed, I reflected on the day. It was full of simple activities, walking, talking, shopping, cooking, but it was meaningful. I realized that daily routines can be great opportunities to practice English and enjoy small moments of happiness. I also felt motivated to continue exploring new places, meeting friends, and learning through daily life experiences. The next morning, I woke up feeling energetic and ready for a new adventure. I decided to go for a short walk before breakfast. The air was crisp and the sky was clear, with a few clouds floating slowly. As I walked down the street, I noticed that the bakery was open early, and the smell of fresh bread and pastries filled the air. I thought about buying a small croissant for breakfast, so I went inside. The bakery was warm and welcoming with shelves full of different kinds of bread, cakes, and pastries. I chose a croissant and a small fruit tart. While paying, I tried a few sentences in English with the cashier. I said, "Good morning. How are you today?" And she smiled, replying, "Good morning. I'm fine. Thank you. And you?" Practicing English in everyday situations like this helps me gain confidence. After buying the pastries, I walked to a nearby park to enjoy my breakfast outside. I sat on a bench under a large tree. Children were playing nearby, and their laughter filled the air. An elderly couple was feeding birds near the pond, and some joggers ran past me.
I enjoyed the quiet and peaceful atmosphere while eating my croissant and tart. I also took a few minutes to watch the ducks swim in the pond and notice how calm everything seemed in the morning. I reminded myself to pay attention to small details because they often make for good conversation practice in English. Later, I returned home to get ready for the day. I planned to visit the city library to borrow a book and maybe join a small reading club. I quickly had a shower, put on comfortable clothes, and packed my bag with water, a notebook, and a pen. I also took my library card and phone. The walk to the library was enjoyable because I passed familiar streets and shops. I greeted neighbors as I passed them using simple English phrases. "Good morning," I said to a man walking his dog. He smiled and replied, "Morning, how are you today?" Practicing these everyday greetings is a simple way to improve English speaking skills. When I arrived at the library, I was greeted by a friendly librarian. I asked, "Hello, can you help me find books about travel and culture?" She nodded and said, "Of course, follow me." She led me to a section filled with colorful books about different countries, languages, and travel experiences. I picked up a book about famous cities around the world. While browsing, I practiced reading English aloud quietly to myself. Reading aloud helps improve pronunciation and confidence. I also noticed some simple phrases used in sentences that I could use in conversations. After choosing the book, I went to the reading area and found a quiet spot. The library was peaceful, with only a few people reading or working on laptops. I opened my book and began reading. Each paragraph introduced new words and expressions. When I encountered a word I didn't know, I wrote it down in my notebook along with its meaning. I also made sentences using these new words to remember them better. While reading, I sometimes whispered sentences aloud to practice pronunciation. Reading like this is helpful because it combines learning vocabulary, grammar, and fluency in one activity. After an hour of reading, I decided to attend the reading club session. The group had about 6 people, all sitting in a circle with their books. The club leader, a friendly woman named Emily, welcomed me warmly. She asked me to introduce myself and say a few words about what I like to read. I said, "Hello, my name is Julia. I enjoy reading books about travel, culture, and daily life. I also like to improve my English listening and speaking skills." Everyone smiled, and some asked questions about the books I had read before. I answered in simple English, trying to speak clearly. The leader encouraged us to discuss our favorite parts of the books we were reading. During the discussion, we shared our opinions and asked questions about each other's reading choices. I learned new phrases and ways to express opinions in English, such as, "I find this chapter interesting because," or "I didn't understand this part. Can you explain?" Listening carefully to how others spoke helped me notice different accents and pronunciation. I also practiced asking questions like, "What did you like most about this story?" Or "How do you usually choose books?" Speaking and listening in this small group made me feel more confident in everyday English conversations. After the reading session, I borrowed a few books to take home. I thanked Emily and the other members, saying, "Thank you for today. I enjoyed our discussion very much." They smiled and replied, "You're welcome. Come again next week."
Leaving the library, I walked slowly through the city streets. The weather was pleasant, and I noticed small shops I hadn't seen before. I stopped at a fruit stand and bought some bananas and oranges for a snack. The vendor was friendly, and I asked, "How much for these bananas?" He replied, $2. I gave him the money and said, "Thank you. Have a good day." Practicing short conversations like this helps me feel comfortable using English in daily life. When I returned home, I unpacked the books and fruits. I prepared a small snack and started reading one of the new books. While reading, I made notes about words and phrases I wanted to remember. I also tried to make sentences using these words to practice speaking in my mind. Later, I listened to a podcast in English while doing some light cleaning around the apartment. Listening to English in different situations helps me improve comprehension and pronunciation. In the afternoon, I decided to go to a nearby cafe to practice more English. I took my notebook and pen with me. At the cafe, I ordered a latte and a slice of cake. I sat near the window and practiced writing sentences in English about my day so far. I described the people I saw outside, the cafe environment, and even the colors of the walls and furniture. Writing sentences like this helps me organize thoughts in English and improve vocabulary. I also occasionally read them aloud quietly to practice pronunciation. While at the cafe, I noticed a young man sitting alone at a table looking at his laptop. I decided to say hello and start a simple conversation in English. I asked, "Hi, do you come here often?" He smiled and replied, "Hello. Not really, just sometimes." I continued, "I like this cafe because it's quiet and comfortable. Do you like it here?" He nodded and said, "Yes, it's nice for working." We talked for a few minutes about our favorite cafes and local spots in the city. Talking to new people, even briefly, is a great way to practice speaking and listening skills. After leaving the cafe, I took a longer walk through the city streets. I explored small alleys, noticing interesting shops and street art. I stopped at a small stationery store and bought a set of colorful pens for my English practice notebook. While interacting with the shopkeeper, I asked questions about the items, using phrases like, "How much is this?" and "Do you have different colors?" He kindly answered and even suggested a few other items I might like. Practicing these small interactions helps me gain confidence in speaking English in real life situations. When I got home, I put away the pens and prepared a small snack with the fruits I had bought earlier. I sat at my desk and wrote a short story in English about my day. I included details about the library, cafe, streets, and people I had met. Writing stories like this helps me practice grammar, vocabulary, and sentence structure. After finishing, I read the story aloud to practice pronunciation and fluency. In the evening, I cooked a light dinner and listened to an English podcast while cooking. The podcast discussed simple daily topics like shopping, walking in the city, and talking to neighbors. I tried repeating some sentences aloud and making my own examples. After dinner, I cleaned the kitchen and organized my notes for the next day's English practice. Before going to bed, I reflected on the day. I realized that even small activities like walking, shopping, reading, or talking to strangers can be excellent opportunities to practice English. Paying attention to details, asking questions, and practicing speaking and listening throughout the day is natural. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of birds singing outside my window. I made a cup of coffee and sat by the window watching the street slowly come to life. The sun was shining and a gentle breeze moved the leaves on the trees. Today, I had planned to run a few errands, visit a small local market, and maybe help someone with directions, which would be a good chance to practice English in real life situations. I quickly had breakfast, toast with jam and a banana, then got ready. I put on a light jacket, comfortable shoes, and packed a small bag with my wallet, phone, and a reusable water bottle. I also carried a notebook and pen to write down any new words or expressions I might hear during the day. As I walked down my street, I noticed the usual morning activity. People were heading to work, some walking their dogs, and some jogging in the park nearby. I greeted a few neighbors with a simple good morning, and they replied warmly. Walking in the fresh morning air helped me feel alert and ready to focus on practicing English throughout the day. I decided to take a slightly different route to the market, passing by streets I hadn't explored before. Along the way,
I saw a young man struggling with a map. He looked confused and a little stressed. I approached him and asked, "Excuse me, do you need help?" He looked relieved and said, "Yes, please. I'm trying to find the city museum, but I'm lost." I smiled and gave him directions slowly and clearly using simple English words. Go straight for 2 blocks, then turn right, walk past the bookstore, and you will see the museum on your left. He thanked me and said, "Thank you so much." I replied, "You're welcome. Enjoy your visit." Helping him made me feel happy and gave me confidence in speaking English to strangers. After helping him, I continued walking toward the market. The streets were starting to get busier with more people shopping and heading to work. The market was full of colors and smells. Fresh fruits, vegetables, and flowers were displayed on small stalls, and vendors called out to attract customers. I walked slowly, looking at everything carefully. I decided to buy some fresh vegetables for dinner and a few fruits for snacks. I picked up tomatoes, cucumbers, and a small bag of apples. At one stall, I saw beautiful bouquets of flowers. I chose a small bunch of daisies to brighten my kitchen. While paying, I practiced English by asking, "How much are the flowers?" The vendor replied, $5 for the bunch. I handed over the money and said, "Thank you. Have a nice day." This simple interaction reinforced my confidence in asking questions and using English in everyday situations. After finishing my shopping, I decided to take a short walk around the neighborhood before heading home. I noticed a small cafe I had never visited before. Its windows were decorated with plants, and the smell of fresh coffee came outside. I went inside and ordered a latte and a small croissant. While waiting for my order, I observed the environment. There were a few people sitting at tables, some reading, others working on laptops. I practiced describing the scene in my notebook in English. There is a man reading a newspaper. A woman is typing on her laptop. The walls are painted light green and there are small plants on the tables. Writing descriptions like this helps me improve vocabulary and sentence structure. Once I received my latte and croissant, I sat by the window and enjoyed the warm morning light. I noticed a young girl sitting at a table near me, sketching in a notebook. I thought about asking her a question to practice English, but I didn't want to disturb her concentration. Instead, I focused on my own thoughts and practiced making sentences in my head. The cafe is quiet and relaxing. I enjoy the smell of coffee. The morning is sunny and calm. After a few minutes, I finished my snack, paid the bell, and left the cafe, feeling ready for the next part of my day. Walking toward home, I passed a small street market again. Today, it was more crowded than yesterday. I noticed the man struggling to carry a heavy bag of groceries. I walked over and offered in English, "Do you want some help with that?" He smiled and said, "Yes, please. Thank you very much." I helped him carry the bag to his car and said, "No problem. Have a good day." Interacting with people in different situations not only gives me more opportunities to speak English, but also teaches me polite phrases and expressions. Once I returned home, I unpacked my groceries and arranged them in the kitchen. I washed the vegetables and prepared a simple salad for lunch. While preparing the food, I practiced English by describing my actions. I am cutting tomatoes. I am washing the cucumbers. I am mixing the salad. Speaking out loud in English while doing everyday tasks helps me improve fluency naturally. After lunch, I clean the kitchen and organize my notes from the morning, writing down any new words or phrases I had learned. In the afternoon, I decided to visit the city park for a longer walk. I took my water bottle, notebook, and a light snack. The park was lively with children playing, joggers running, and people sitting on benches. I found a quiet spot near the pond and sat down to practice listening and speaking. I listened to a short English podcast on my phone about daily routines and repeated sentences aloud. I wake up early. I drink coffee. I go for a walk. Practicing in context helps me remember phrases better. While sitting near the pond, I noticed an elderly man feeding birds. I decided to start a conversation. I said, "Good afternoon. Are these birds yours?" He chuckled and said, "No, I just like to feed them every day." I asked more questions. "Do you come here often?" He replied, "Yes, every afternoon. It's relaxing." I listened carefully to his words and practiced responding naturally. I like coming here too. It's peaceful and beautiful. Talking to people of different ages and backgrounds helps me practice various expressions and listening skills. After the park, I walked back toward the city center. On the way, I saw a street artist drawing portraits. A small crowd had gathered. I observed his work and practiced describing it in English. The artist is drawing a portrait of a young woman. People are watching quietly. The sun is shining on the street. Describing scenes out loud is a helpful way to improve vocabulary and fluency. When I reached the quiet street near my apartment, I saw a small bookstore I hadn't noticed before. I decided to go inside. The store was cozy with shelves filled with books of different genres. I asked the shopkeeper in English, "Do you have books about daily life in the city?" He replied, "Yes, over here. These books are about everyday experiences." I browsed the section and picked a book about small stories in a city. I flipped through the pages, reading a few sentences aloud to practice pronunciation and understanding. I bought the book and walked back home. Once home, I prepared a light snack and started reading. Each story gave me new words and expressions to use in conversations. I wrote down interesting sentences in my notebook and tried making my own examples. Later, I listened to another podcast in English about daily life and city experiences, repeating sentences aloud and practicing pronunciation. In the evening, I cooked a simple dinner with the fresh vegetables I bought earlier. While cooking, I described my actions in English. I am chopping tomatoes. I am boiling water. I am stirring the vegetables. After dinner, I cleaned the kitchen and reviewed my notes from the day. I reflected on how small interactions like helping someone carry groceries or talking to strangers provide excellent opportunities to practice English naturally. Finally, before going to bed, I sat by my desk with my notebook and wrote a short paragraph summarizing my day. Today, I helped someone with directions, went shopping, visited the park, talked to people, and practiced English listening and speaking. I feel happy and confident. Small daily activities are good ways to learn English.
The next morning, I woke up feeling refreshed and ready to explore more of the city. I made a cup of coffee and a simple breakfast, toast with butter and a glass of juice. Then I planned my day. Today, I wanted to visit a small community event happening in the city square. It was a weekend market with local crafts, music, and food stalls. I thought it would be a perfect opportunity to practice English by interacting with different people and observing everyday conversations. I packed my bag with a notebook, pen, water bottle, and a camera to take photos of interesting things I could describe in English later. As I left my apartment, the streets were calm with a few early joggers and people walking their dogs. I greeted a neighbor with a friendly good morning, and she responded with a smile. Good morning, Julia. How are you today? I replied, I'm fine, thank you. And you? Practicing these simple greetings every day helps me feel more comfortable speaking English in real situations. I walked toward the city square, noticing shops and cafes opening for the morning. A small bakery on the corner had freshly baked croissants, and I thought about buying one as a snack for later. When I reached the city square, I could hear soft music playing from a small stage. Musicians were warming up, and some people were setting up craft stalls. The air smelled of fresh bread, roasted coffee, and flowers from nearby vendors. The colors of the tents and decorations were bright and cheerful. I started walking slowly, taking in the scene. I saw a woman arranging handmade jewelry on a table and decided to start a conversation. I asked politely in English, Hello, these necklaces are beautiful. Did you make them yourself? She smiled and replied, Yes, I made them. Thank you for asking. I responded, You are very talented. How long have you been making jewelry? She explained that she had been creating pieces for several years and enjoyed selling them at local markets. Talking to her helped me practice asking questions and responding naturally in English. After visiting the jewelry stall, I walked to a small food stand offering fresh pastries and coffee. I decided to buy a small chocolate croissant and a latte. While paying, I practiced English by saying, How much is this? And Thank you very much. The vendor smiled and replied, That's $3. Enjoy your croissant. I took my snack and found a small bench to sit and observe the event. People were walking around, laughing and talking. Some children were playing nearby, and the musicians had started performing a soft tune. I described the scene in my notebook to practice vocabulary. The children are running. People are buying food and crafts. The music is soft and relaxing. The sky is clear and blue. Writing descriptions helps me notice details I might otherwise overlook and gives me phrases I can use in conversations later. After finishing my snack, I walked toward a small area where local artists were displaying paintings. I admired the colorful artwork and started a conversation with one of the artists. I asked, Hello, your paintings are amazing. How do you get inspiration for them? He replied, Thank you. I get inspiration from nature and daily life. I like to capture small moments. I responded, That's very interesting. I also like noticing small moments in my day. It helps me practice English too. He laughed and said, That's a good idea. Observing and describing life is very useful. Speaking with him gave me new phrases and ideas for practicing English in daily life. While exploring the market, I noticed a small tent offering workshops for children. A group of kids was learning how to paint simple pictures guided by a teacher. I observed the lesson quietly
and describe the scene in my notebook. The children are painting flowers. The teacher is helping them with colors. Some parents are watching and taking photos. Everyone looks happy and excited. Describing these scenes out loud and in writing helps me practice vocabulary related to everyday life. I decided to join a short public workshop myself. It was a simple pottery class for beginners. The instructor explained each step in English, demonstrating how to shape clay into small bowls. I listened carefully and repeated her instructions quietly in my head. Use your fingers to shape the clay. Press gently. Rotate the bowl slowly. Practicing listening and following instructions in English in real situations is very helpful. I made a small clay bowl and felt proud of my work. After the class, I asked the instructor, "How long does it take to make a larger bowl?" She replied, "It depends, but usually a few hours." I thanked her and left the workshop feeling more confident speaking English in real life scenarios. Next, I walked toward a small area where local musicians were performing. A group played acoustic guitar and sang soft songs. Some people were clapping along, and others were recording videos on their phones. I described the scene in my notebook to practice descriptive language. The musicians are playing guitar and singing. People are clapping and watching. The music is soft and enjoyable. The weather is warm and sunny. Practicing descriptions like this helps me learn new words and phrases naturally. As I continued exploring, I noticed a woman selling fresh flowers. I approached her and asked, "Hello, what kinds of flowers do you have today?" She replied, "We have roses, tulips, and daisies." I asked, "How much are the daisies?" She said, $5 for a small bunch. I bought a small bouquet and practiced saying, "Thank you. Have a nice day." Interacting with vendors at markets is a simple way to practice English phrases used in daily life. After walking around the market for a while, I decided to visit a nearby small park. I carried my notebook and pen with me, planning to sit and write about the day. The park was filled with families, joggers, and people walking dogs. I found a quiet bench and sat down. I listened carefully to the conversations around me, trying to catch familiar words and phrases. Some people were discussing their weekend plans, while others were talking about work or school. Listening to these real conversations is excellent practice for understanding everyday English. I started writing in my notebook about the day so far. I visited the weekend market. I saw artists, musicians, and children playing. I bought a chocolate croissant and a small bouquet of daisies. I attended a pottery class and made a small bowl. I listened to people talking and practiced English listening and speaking. Writing summaries of daily activities helps improve grammar, vocabulary, and expression. After a while, I decided to take a short walk around the park. I noticed an elderly man feeding birds near the pond. I said, "Good afternoon. Are these birds your friends?" He laughed and said, "Not really, but I like feeding them every day." I asked, "Do you come here often?" He replied, "Yes, almost every afternoon. It's peaceful and relaxing." I practiced responding naturally. "I like coming here too. It's quiet and nice. I enjoy listening to the birds and watching the pond." Small conversations like this are great ways to practice polite phrases and everyday English expressions. As the sun started to lower in the sky, I walked back toward the market area to see if there were any stalls I had missed. I noticed a man selling handmade bags. I approached him and asked, "Hello, these bags are very nice. How do you make them?" He explained that he sewed each bag himself using recycled materials. I replied, "That's amazing. I like handmade things because they're unique." He smiled and said, "Thank you. People like your appreciation." Talking to different vendors throughout the day helped me practice asking questions, responding politely, and listening carefully. After exploring all the stalls, I decided to head home. On the way, I stopped at a small cafe for a latte. I sat by the window and wrote down more notes in my notebook. New words, phrases I heard from vendors, and sentences I practiced with strangers. I also described the scene outside. People are walking by. Some are carrying shopping bags. The street is busy but friendly. A dog is walking with its owner. The sky is turning orange as the sun sets. Practicing observation and description improves English vocabulary and speaking fluency. When I returned home, I unpacked the flowers and placed them in a vase on my desk. I prepared a light dinner using fresh vegetables I had bought earlier. While cooking, I described my actions in English. I am chopping tomatoes. I am boiling water. I am stirring vegetables. I am preparing dinner. After dinner, I cleaned the kitchen and reviewed my notebook. I read aloud sentences I had written about the market, park, and conversations, practicing pronunciation and intonation. Before going to bed, I reflected on the day. Visiting the community event allowed me to interact with many people, observe daily life, and practice English naturally. I realized that small interactions make a big difference in learning. The next morning, I woke up feeling energetic and ready for a new day of exploring the city. I had a different plan today. I wanted to visit the city library for a research session and later attend a small local cooking class. I thought this would be a great opportunity to practice English listening, speaking, and writing skills in new situations. After a light breakfast of oatmeal and a glass of juice, I packed my bag with my notebook, pen, library card, and a reusable water bottle. I also grabbed my phone to take photos of interesting things I could describe later in English. As I left my apartment, the streets were already starting to get busy. People were walking to work, children were on their way to school, and some were jogging in the park nearby. I greeted a neighbor with a cheerful "Good morning." She smiled and replied, "Good morning, Julia. How are you today?" I responded, "I'm fine, thank you. And you?" These small daily conversations help me practice polite greetings and simple responses in English. Walking to the library, I passed by a small bakery with the aroma of fresh bread and pastries wafting through the air. I stopped for a moment and said to myself in English, "I like the smell of fresh bread. It makes the morning feel lively." Speaking to myself in English while observing my surroundings is a useful way to improve fluency. When I arrived at the city library, I greeted the librarian and asked, "Good morning. Can you help me find books about cooking and recipes from different countries?" The librarian smiled and replied, "Of course, follow me." She led me to a section filled with colorful cookbooks from around the world. I picked up a few books, looking at pictures of dishes and reading simple sentences aloud to practice pronunciation. Each book introduced new vocabulary about ingredients, cooking methods, and cultural food traditions. Writing down these words in my notebook helps me remember them and create sentences later. I found a quiet table in the reading area and started reading one of the cookbooks. The book had simple instructions for making pasta, soups, and salads. I practiced reading aloud.
Boil water in a pot. Add salt. Mix the vegetables slowly. Cook for 10 minutes. Reading aloud helps me improve pronunciation and fluency. After a while, I wrote a short paragraph in my notebook summarizing what I learned. I learned how to make pasta with vegetables. I read about different cooking methods. I practiced English words like boil, mix, chop, and cook. Writing summaries of what I read reinforces vocabulary and grammar. While I was reading, a young man sitting nearby noticed my notebook and asked in English, "Are you practicing English?" I smiled and replied, "Yes, I am. I like reading cookbooks and writing notes in English." He said, "That's a good idea. I practice English by reading newspapers." We started a short conversation about learning English, exchanging ideas about how to practice listening, speaking, and writing. Talking to strangers in English, even briefly, is very useful for improving conversation skills. After spending an hour at the library, I decided it was time to attend the cooking class I had registered for earlier. The class was held at a small cooking studio near the library. I arrived a few minutes early and greeted the instructor, saying, "Good morning, I'm Julia. I'm excited to learn today." The instructor, a friendly woman named Maria, welcomed me warmly and explained the menu for the day: a simple vegetable stir-fry with rice and a fruit salad for dessert. She also explained that the class would be in English so that participants could practice cooking vocabulary and conversation. We started by washing and chopping vegetables. Maria explained each step slowly in English, and I repeated the words aloud quietly. Chop the carrots. Slice the bell peppers. Cut the tomatoes. While chopping, I asked her questions in English. "How thin should I slice the carrots?" She replied, "Half a centimeter thick. That's perfect." Asking questions and listening to responses in English is excellent practice for real-life situations. I noticed that other participants were also practicing phrases like, "Can you pass the knife?" and "How much salt should I add?" Everyone was supportive and we helped each other while speaking in English. After chopping the vegetables, we moved to the stove to cook the stir-fry. Maria demonstrated how to heat the pan, add oil, and mix the vegetables carefully. I followed her instructions and practiced describing my actions aloud. I am heating the pan. I am adding oil. I'm stirring the vegetables slowly. Speaking English while performing actions helps reinforce vocabulary and sentence structure. I also asked her, "How long should I cook the vegetables?" She answered, "Cook for 5 minutes until they are soft but still crunchy." I nodded and repeated, 5 minutes until soft but crunchy. Once the stir-fry was ready, we moved on to the fruit salad. Maria explained the steps: washing fruits, cutting them into small pieces, and mixing them in a bowl. I practiced the new words aloud: wash, cut, mix, bowl, pieces. I asked a classmate, "Do you like fruit salad?" He replied, "Yes, it's healthy and delicious." I said, "I agree. It's easy to make and tasty." Small conversations like this during activities help me practice natural English. After finishing the cooking, we sat down to eat together. We discussed our favorite foods and cooking experiences in English. I shared that I enjoy cooking simple meals and practicing English while doing it. One participant asked, "Do you cook every day?" I replied, "Yes, I like cooking and learning new recipes. It also helps me practice English." Talking about personal routines and hobbies is a common topic in daily English conversations. After the class, Maria suggested we take a photo with our dishes. I said, "That's a great idea. I want to remember this day." We all smiled and took pictures. I described the scene in my notebook. We made vegetable stir-fry and fruit salad. The cooking class was fun. People are smiling.
The food looks delicious. Describing experiences in writing helps improve vocabulary, grammar, and fluency. Walking back home, I reflected on the day. I had learned new cooking skills, practiced English listening and speaking, and met new people. I stopped at a small grocery store to buy ingredients for the next day. I practiced English by asking the shopkeeper, "Do you have fresh mushrooms? And how much is this pack of rice?" He answered politely, and I replied, "Thank you. Have a good day." These simple interactions reinforce polite expressions in everyday vocabulary. Once home, I unpacked the groceries and prepared a light snack. I wrote a short paragraph summarizing my cooking class and library visit. Today, I went to the library to read cookbooks. I practiced listening and speaking. I attended a cooking class and made vegetable stir fry and fruit salad. I met new people and asked questions in English. Writing summaries daily is an effective way to remember vocabulary and grammar rules. In the evening, I cooked a small portion of the stir fry I had learned in class for dinner. While cooking, I described my actions aloud. I am heating the pan. I am adding vegetables. I'm stirring carefully. I also listened to an English podcast about cooking and daily routines, repeating sentences aloud and making my own examples. Listening and speaking while performing daily activities strengthens comprehension and fluency. Before bed, I organized my notes and reflected on the day. Visiting the library and attending a cooking class allowed me to practice English in different contexts: reading, listening, speaking, and writing. I realized that everyday activities like cooking, asking questions, and observing people are excellent opportunities to improve English naturally. I felt motivated to continue exploring new experiences and learning through daily life. The next morning, I woke up feeling excited because today I had a new plan. I wanted to explore a small local festival that was taking place in the city park. It was a weekend arts and crafts festival with live music, food stalls, and games for families. I thought it would be a perfect way to practice English listening and speaking in a lively, real world environment. After a quick breakfast of toast with jam and a glass of orange juice, I packed my bag with a notebook, pen, phone, water bottle, and a small camera to take pictures for later descriptions. I also included a small snack because I knew I would be walking around for a long time. When I left my apartment, the streets were buzzing with weekend activity. People were heading to the festival, some walking dogs, others carrying picnic baskets. I greeted a neighbor with a cheerful "Good morning," and she replied, "Good morning, Julia. Are you going to the festival?" I smiled and said, "Yes, I want to explore and practice English while talking to people." Even small exchanges like this help improve conversational confidence and everyday vocabulary. I walked toward the park, enjoying the fresh air and the warmth of the morning sun on my face. As I arrived at the festival, I noticed the colorful tents, banners, and decorations. There were musicians tuning their instruments, artists arranging their artwork, and food vendors preparing fresh dishes. I took a few moments to observe everything.
practicing English descriptions in my notebook. There are many tents with crafts. People are smiling and walking. Music is playing. Children are running and laughing. Describing scenes out loud or in writing helps improve vocabulary, sentence structure, and observational skills. I walked toward a craft tent where a woman was selling handmade candles. I greeted her and asked, "Hello, these candles are beautiful. Did you make them yourself?" She smiled and replied, "Yes, I made each one by hand. Thank you for asking." I continued, "How long does it take to make a candle?" She explained, "It takes about 1 hour to make a small candle and a few hours for a large one." I nodded and said, "That's amazing. I like handmade things because they are unique." Asking questions and listening carefully to the answers is a great way to practice English in real life situations. Next, I visited a small food stall offering local snacks. I was curious about a dish I had never tried before. I asked the vendor, "Hello, can you tell me what this is?" He explained, "This is a traditional rice snack with vegetables and spices. It is very popular here." I replied, "Thank you. How do you eat it?" He smiled and said, "You can eat it with your hands or with a spoon." I decided to buy one and practice describing it in my notebook while eating. The snack is warm and spicy. It has vegetables and rice. The taste is delicious and unique. Describing food is a useful skill for English learners because it helps expand vocabulary for tastes, textures, and ingredients. After enjoying the snack, I walked to the stage area where a local band was performing. People were clapping, some dancing lightly, and others were recording videos. I practiced describing the scene. The band is playing guitars and drums. People are smiling and dancing. The music is lively and fun. I noticed a group of teenagers asking questions to the musicians in English, like, "How long have you been playing?" And "Do you perform often?" I thought about asking similar questions to practice speaking, but waited for a quieter moment. I then visited a small arts and crafts workshop where children and adults were painting small wooden figures. The instructor, speaking slowly in English, explained the steps. First, choose your figure. Then, select your colors. Finally, paint carefully and let it dry. I decided to join the workshop myself. I chose a small wooden bird and practiced the instructions aloud. I am choosing the bird. I am selecting blue and yellow colors. I am painting carefully. Speaking while performing actions reinforces new vocabulary and phrases naturally. While painting, I started a conversation with the participant sitting next to me. I asked, "Hello, what are you painting?" She replied, "I am painting a small cat. I like using bright colors." I said, "That's nice. I am painting a bird. I like the blue and yellow colors." We continued talking briefly about our favorite colors and why we enjoy painting. Engaging in short conversations with strangers
helps me practice forming sentences and using polite expressions in English. After finishing my painting, I walked toward another section of the festival where local storytellers were sharing short stories for children. I found a bench nearby and listened quietly. The storyteller spoke slowly and clearly, using simple English phrases. I repeated some sentences quietly to practice pronunciation. Once upon a time, there was a small bird who wanted to fly far away. He learned courage and patience on his journey. Listening carefully and repeating sentences aloud improves comprehension, pronunciation, and memory for sentence structures. While listening to the stories, I noticed a small stand selling books. I approached and asked, "Hello, do you have books for English learners?" She replied, "Yes, we have some simple stories for beginners and intermediate learners." I picked a few books and flipped through the pages, reading aloud quietly to practice pronunciation. I also wrote down new words and phrases in my notebook. Reading books aloud in public places helps build confidence and fluency. After the bookstall, I explored a small area where local artisans demonstrated traditional crafts. One man was weaving baskets while explaining the process in English. I asked, "How long does it take to make a basket?" He said, "It depends on the size. A small basket takes about 2 hours." I observed carefully and described the process in my notebook. The man is weaving thin strips of wood. He is crossing them to form a pattern. The basket is small and round. Observing and describing processes out loud strengthens vocabulary related to actions and materials. Next, I walked toward a small tent where people were tasting local desserts. I asked politely, "Can I try this?" The vendor handed me a small piece and said, "This is a sweet cake made with honey and nuts." I took a bite and described it in my notebook. The cake is sweet and soft. I can taste honey and small pieces of nuts. It melts in my mouth. Practicing descriptive words while tasting food helps expand vocabulary for textures and flavors. I noticed a young man near the dessert stall practicing English with a friend. They were asking questions about the festival. "What's your favorite stall?" And "Have you tried the food?" I joined the conversation and asked, "Which stall do you like the most?" He replied, "I like the painting workshop. It's fun to create things." I said, "I enjoyed the storytelling area. It was interesting and easy to understand." Short conversations like this are helpful for practicing questions, responses, and expressing opinions. After spending a few hours at the festival, I walked to a small fountain in the park to rest. I sat on a bench and wrote a detailed paragraph about the festival in my notebook. Today, I visited the local arts and crafts festival. I saw musicians, painters, and storytellers. I tried traditional snacks and desserts. I joined a painting workshop and met new people. I listened carefully and practiced speaking English. I described everything in my notebook. Writing summaries helps reinforce vocabulary, sentence structure, and memory. I took a short walk around the park, noticing families having picnics, children playing, and couples walking dogs. I practiced describing the scene aloud. Children are running and laughing. Families are eating snacks on blankets. Dogs are playing. The sun is warm and the sky is clear. Speaking aloud about everyday scenes strengthens fluency and helps connect vocabulary to real life experiences. Later, I decided to visit a small craft store nearby. I asked the shopkeeper, "Do you have handmade notebooks?" He showed me several options and explained, "These are made from recycled paper. Each notebook is unique." I picked one and said, "Thank you. I like the colors. I will use it to practice English." Practicing polite expressions and simple conversations in shops is a natural way to improve everyday English skills. On the way home, I stopped at a small cafe for a latte. I sat by the window and wrote a reflection about the day. I visited the Arts and Crafts Festival. I met new people, tried traditional food, and joined a painting workshop. I listened to storytelling and practiced English in conversations and writing. It was a fun and productive day. Writing reflections helps improve sentence structure, grammar, and vocabulary usage. Once home, I prepared a light dinner and described my actions aloud. I am cooking rice. I am preparing vegetables. I am stirring everything carefully. I also listened to an English podcast about festivals and cultural activities while cooking, repeating sentences aloud and making my own examples. Listening and speaking in real context deepens understanding. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of curiosity and excitement because today I planned to explore the local farmers market, which I had heard was full of fresh produce, homemade goods, and friendly vendors. I thought it would be a perfect opportunity to practice English by talking to vendors, asking questions, and describing my surroundings. After a quick breakfast of yogurt with fruit and a slice of toast, I packed my bag with my notebook, pen, water bottle, wallet, and a small camera. I also brought a reusable shopping bag because I planned to buy some fresh vegetables and fruits. As I left my apartment, the streets were lively with people heading to the market. Some were walking their dogs and others were carrying baskets for shopping. I greeted a neighbor with a cheerful, "Good morning." She replied, "Good morning, Julia. Are you going to the market?" I smiled and said, "Yes, I want to see the fresh produce and practice English while talking to people." Even these small interactions help me improve my English conversation skills and build confidence. Walking toward the market, I took a moment to describe my surroundings aloud. The sun is shining. People are smiling. Children are laughing and playing near the park. The street smells like fresh bread from a bakery nearby. Speaking aloud about everyday life helps improve fluency naturally. When I arrived at the market, I was immediately greeted by colorful stalls filled with fruits, vegetables, flowers, and homemade goods. The smell of fresh bread, fruits, and herbs filled the air. I walked slowly, observing everything and taking notes in my notebook. There are red tomatoes, green cucumbers, yellow lemons, and bunches of flowers. People are shopping and talking. The market is lively and busy. Describing scenes in detail improves vocabulary and helps me notice words for colors, textures, and objects. I first approached a vegetable stall. I asked the vendor, "Hello, can you tell me which vegetables are fresh today?" He smiled and replied, "Yes, the tomatoes and cucumbers were picked this morning. They are very fresh." I asked, "How much are the cucumbers?" He answered, $2 per kilo. I said, "Thank you. I will take 1 kilo." I also practiced describing the vegetables in my notebook. The cucumbers are green and firm. The tomatoes are red and shiny. Interacting with vendors helps me learn phrases for shopping, asking questions, and describing items. Next, I walked to a fruit stall. The vendor was arranging apples, oranges, bananas, and berries. I asked, "Which fruits are ripe today?" He replied, "The apples and berries are very sweet and ripe." I bought a small bag of berries and an apple and practiced polite expressions. "Thank you very much. Have a good day." These interactions, though simple, are excellent for practicing conversational English in everyday situations. I also took a few photos of the colorful displays to describe later in my notebook. As I walked further, I noticed a small stall selling homemade bread. The smell was inviting, so I approached and asked, "Hello, what kind of bread do you have today?" The baker explained, "I have sourdough, whole wheat, and a special honey bread." I replied, "The honey bread smells delicious. I will try a small piece." I described the experience in my notebook. The bread is soft and warm. It has a sweet smell and tastes delicious. Practicing descriptions while eating or experiencing something new helps me connect vocabulary to real life sensations. After buying bread, I noticed a small flower stall. I asked, "Hello, what flowers do you have?" The vendor replied, "We have roses, daisies, and tulips." I chose a small bunch of daisies and asked, "How much are the daisies?" She said, $5 for a bunch. I handed her the money and said, "Thank you. Have a nice day." Carrying out these small transactions helps reinforce polite expressions and everyday vocabulary. While walking through the market, I heard a woman asking another vendor, "Can you recommend a good recipe for these vegetables?" I decided to join the conversation and said, "I like making simple salads with fresh vegetables. You can mix tomatoes, cucumbers, and some herbs." She smiled and said, "That's a good idea. I will try it." Sharing ideas in English, even briefly, is a great way to practice speaking naturally. I wrote down the sentence in my notebook. You can mix tomatoes, cucumbers, and herbs for a simple salad. Writing new phrases helps me remember them for future use. I continued exploring the market and saw a small stand where local artists were selling handmade crafts. One man was painting small wooden boxes. I approached him and asked, "Hello, how do you make these boxes?" He explained, "I paint each one by hand and add small designs with bright colors." I said, "That is amazing. I like the colors and patterns." I described the process in my notebook. The man is painting wooden boxes. Each box has colorful patterns. He works carefully and slowly. Observing and describing processes in detail is excellent practice for English vocabulary related to actions and materials. After visiting the craft stall, I decided to watch a short demonstration at a small cooking stand. A chef was showing how to make a simple vegetable soup. I listened carefully and repeated instructions aloud. Chop the carrots, slice the onions, add water to the pot, boil for 10 minutes. Following instructions in English helps improve listening comprehension and sentence repetition skills. I also wrote the steps in my notebook for practice. Chop carrots, slice onions, add water, boil for 10 minutes. Writing down instructions reinforces vocabulary and sequencing words. While standing near the cooking demonstration, I met another visitor. I asked, "Hello, do you come to this market often?" He replied, "Yes, almost every weekend. I like buying fresh vegetables and meeting people." I said, "I enjoy coming too. It is lively and full of interesting things." Talking about routines and experiences is a common topic in daily English conversations. I noted down the sentences in my notebook for practice. I enjoy coming to the market. It is lively. I like fresh vegetables and talking to people. After the demonstration,
I walked to a small area where children were playing games. Some were painting while others were running around. I described the scene in my notebook. Children are running and laughing. Some are painting small pictures. Parents are watching and taking photos. The sun is bright and warm. Observing and describing everyday scenes helps improve vocabulary for actions, emotions, and weather. I also practice speaking these sentences aloud to improve pronunciation and fluency. I decided to visit a small coffee stand to rest and practice writing. I ordered a latte and a small pastry. Practicing English with the vendor, I said, "Hello, I would like a latte and one pastry, please." He replied politely, "Sure, that will be $4." I paid and said, "Thank you very much." Sitting at a small table, I wrote a detailed paragraph about the morning. I visited the farmer's market. I bought fresh vegetables, fruits, and bread. I saw artists painting, children playing, and a cooking demonstration. I spoke with vendors and visitors in English. I described everything in my notebook. Writing summaries daily strengthens grammar, vocabulary, and sentence structure. After finishing my snack, I walked through the rest of the market, stopping at a small flower stall again. I asked, "Do you have any flowers that bloom in the summer?" The vendor showed me a small bunch of bright sunflowers. I asked, "How much are these?" She said, $7 for the bunch. I replied, "Thank you. They are beautiful." Carrying flowers home and describing them aloud helps expand vocabulary for colors, shapes, and adjectives. On my way home, I noticed a small community notice board near the park. It had posters for local events, classes, and volunteer opportunities. I read the notices aloud to practice English. Cooking class on Saturday, art workshop for beginners, volunteer cleaning event on Sunday. Reading aloud helps improve pronunciation and comprehension. I decided to note down the events in my notebook in case I wanted to join them in the future. Once at home, I unpacked my groceries and flowers, placing the sunflowers on my desk. I prepared a light dinner using the fresh vegetables I had bought, describing my actions aloud. I am boiling water. I am cutting the vegetables. I am stirring the soup. While cooking, I listened to an English podcast about farmers markets and local festivals, repeating sentences aloud and creating my own examples. Listening while performing daily tasks strengthens comprehension and fluency. Before going to bed, I reflected on the day. Visiting the farmer's market allowed me to practice English in new situations, asking questions, buying items, interacting with strangers, describing scenes, and writing notes. I felt satisfied with my progress and motivated to continue exploring different experiences to improve my listening, speaking, and writing skills naturally. The next morning, I woke up feeling energized because today I had planned to visit a small local photography workshop. I had always wanted to improve my photography skills while practicing English, and this workshop seemed like a perfect opportunity. After a simple breakfast of scrambled eggs and toast with a cup of tea, I packed my bag with a notebook, pen, my camera, extra batteries, and a water bottle. I also included a small snack because the workshop would last for several hours. I felt excited about learning something new and speaking English in a different context. When I left my apartment, the streets were calm and quiet. People were walking to work. A few joggers were passing by, and children were heading to school. I greeted a neighbor with a cheerful, "Good morning," and she replied, "Good morning, Julia. Where are you going today?" I smiled and said, "I'm going to a photography workshop. I want to learn and practice English while taking pictures." Small daily conversations like this help me practice polite greetings and expressing plans in English naturally. Walking toward the workshop venue, I describe the streets aloud to practice vocabulary. The sign is shining. The street is clean. People are walking calmly. There is a small bakery on the corner. When I arrived at the photography studio, the instructor, a friendly man named Daniel, welcomed me warmly. He explained that the workshop would cover basic photography skills, including framing, lighting, and composition, all in English. I introduced myself and said, "Hello, I'm Julia. I'm excited to learn photography today." Daniel smiled and replied, "Welcome, Julia. You will have fun and learn many useful skills." Practicing introductions and polite responses in English helps build confidence in social situations. The workshop started with a brief introduction to camera equipment. Daniel explained the parts of a camera, how to adjust settings, and the importance of lighting. I listened carefully and repeated the new vocabulary aloud: lens, shutter, aperture, ISO, focus, exposure. Writing these words in my notebook helps me remember them and use them later. I also described the instructions in my own words. The shutter controls how fast the camera takes a picture. The aperture controls how much light comes in. ISO changes the camera's sensitivity to light. Rephrasing explanations in my own words strengthens understanding and language skills. Next, Daniel demonstrated how to take pictures with different lighting conditions. He asked us to practice taking photos of simple objects in the room, like flowers, books, and mugs. I chose a small vase of flowers and practiced describing the scene aloud in English. The vase is blue. The flowers are yellow and white. The sunlight is shining from the window. The shadows are soft. Speaking descriptions while taking photos helps me combine English practice with observation skills. While taking photos, I noticed another participant adjusting her camera settings. I asked politely, "Hello, how do you change the shutter speed?" She replied, "You turn this dial here and check the number on the screen." I nodded and said, "Thank you, I will try that." Talking to fellow participants is a natural way to practice asking questions and responding politely in English. I also wrote down the conversation in my notebook. I asked how to change the shutter speed. She showed me the dial and explained the numbers. I thanked her and tried it myself. Writing interactions helps reinforce both vocabulary and polite expressions for real-life conversations. After practicing with objects inside the studio, Daniel suggested we go outside to photograph natural scenes. We walked to a nearby park which was filled with trees, flowers, and small ponds. I described the park aloud while walking. The grass is green. The trees are tall. There are flowers of many colors. Birds are flying. The pond reflects the sky. Speaking aloud while observing nature improves descriptive vocabulary and helps connect words to real-life visuals. Once in the park, Daniel asked us to take pictures focusing on composition. He explained, "Think about the rule of thirds. Place the main subject off-center. Look for leading lines in natural frames." I repeated the terms aloud: rule of thirds, main subject, leading lines, natural frames. I also practiced explaining it in my own words. The main subject should not be in the center. Use lines or objects to guide the eye. Frames can be windows, branches, or bridges.
Rephrasing instructions helps solidify both understanding and English language skills. While taking photos, I noticed a small group of ducks near the pond. I quietly described them aloud. There are 3 ducks swimming. One is brown, one is white, and one is gray. The water is calm and clear. The sunlight makes small reflections. I took several pictures and later wrote down the sentences in my notebook. Observing animals and describing actions is a great way to practice present tense and vocabulary for colors, sizes, and movements. During the session, Daniel encouraged us to take candid photos of people at the park. I hesitated for a moment, but then approached a woman sitting on a bench reading a book. I asked politely, "Excuse me, can I take a photo of you for practice?" She smiled and said, "Sure, that's fine." I took a few pictures and thanked her. "Thank you, you are very kind." This small interaction helped me practice polite requests, expressing gratitude, and using English naturally in real situations. After taking several photos, I sat on a bench to review my shots and take notes. I wrote detailed sentences about each picture. I took a photo of 3 ducks swimming. The sunlight reflected on the water. I took a picture of flowers by the pond. The petals are yellow and red. I also photographed a woman reading on a bench. She smiled politely when I asked. Writing detailed notes about observations strengthens writing skills and descriptive vocabulary. While reviewing my photos, another participant came and asked, "How did you capture the light so well in your flower photo?" I replied, "I tried to adjust the exposure and focus on the petals. The sunlight was helpful too." He nodded and said, "I see. I will try that next." Short conversations like this allow me to practice explaining actions and giving instructions in English, which is useful for daily interactions and professional contexts.
Later, Daniel explained how to take close-up or macro photographs. He gave an example of a small insect on a flower. I practiced the new vocabulary aloud. Macro photography is for small subjects. Focus carefully. Adjust the lens for clarity. I then took a picture of a bee on a yellow flower, describing the scene in my notebook. The bee is small and busy. It has yellow and black stripes. It is collecting pollen from the flower. The petals are soft and bright. Using detailed sentences helps practice adjectives, present tense verbs, and descriptive language. After taking photos, Daniel asked us to share our favorite shot of the day and explain why we liked it. I chose the photo of the 3 ducks swimming and said, "I like this photo because it shows nature and calm water. The sunlight makes reflections, and the colors are beautiful." Practicing explanations in English helps improve sentence structure, giving reasons, and expressing opinions clearly. Other participants also shared their favorite photos, and we asked questions to each other. "Why did you choose this one?" And "What camera settings did you use?" These exchanges encouraged natural English conversation. Once we returned to the studio, Daniel demonstrated basic editing techniques on a computer. He explained how to adjust brightness, contrast, and crop images. I repeated the new words aloud: brightness, contrast, crop, edit. I also practiced explaining the steps. First, I adjust the brightness. Then, I change the contrast. Finally, I crop the image to improve composition. Rephrasing instructions in my own words helps reinforce both comprehension and English vocabulary. After the editing session, we printed a few photos to take home. I chose the picture of the ducks and one of the flowers. I described the prints aloud. The ducks are swimming in a calm pond. The sunlight makes reflections. The flower is yellow and red. The petals are bright and soft. Speaking descriptions aloud reinforces vocabulary and helps with sentence structure and fluency. Before leaving, I thanked Daniel for the workshop. Thank you for teaching us today. I learned many new photography skills and practiced English. He smiled and said, "You did very well. Keep practicing and enjoy your photos." Practicing polite expressions when leaving a class or meeting new people is useful for everyday English. Walking home, I reflected on the day. Visiting the photography workshop allowed me to practice English in many ways, listening to instructions, asking questions, describing scenes, speaking with fellow participants, and writing notes. I also practiced vocabulary for colors, actions, tools, and nature. I felt satisfied with my progress and excited to continue learning English through new experiences. Once home, I organized my photos and wrote a summary of the day in my notebook. Today, I went to a photography workshop. I learned about cameras, lighting, and composition. I practiced taking pictures of flowers, ducks, and people. I edited my photos and described everything in my notebook. I spoke with other participants and explained my favorite photos. I practiced listening, speaking, and writing in English. Writing summaries like this helps reinforce grammar, vocabulary, and fluency. The next morning, I woke up feeling curious and excited because today I plan to volunteer at a small local community center. I had heard that they organized activities for children and elderly people, and I thought it would be a great way to practice English while helping others. After a simple breakfast of toast, scrambled eggs, and a cup of tea, I packed my bag with my notebook, pen, water bottle, a small first aid kit, and a camera to take photos for practice and memory. I also prepared a small snack to eat during a short break at the center. When I left my apartment, the streets were lively with morning activity. People were jogging, walking their dogs, and heading to shops or offices. I greeted a neighbor with a cheerful, "Good morning." She smiled and asked, "Where are you going today?" I replied, "I'm going to volunteer at the community center. I want to help and practice English." Small daily conversations like this are helpful for improving polite expressions and fluency in everyday English. Walking to the community center, I described the street scene aloud. The sun is shining. People are walking and talking. There are flowers on the sidewalks. A small bakery smells like fresh bread. Describing daily life out loud helps improve vocabulary naturally. When I arrived at the community center, I was greeted by the coordinator, a friendly woman named Sarah. She explains that I would help organize activities for children and assist in a small arts and crafts session for elderly visitors. I introduced myself. "Hello, I'm Julia. I'm excited to volunteer today and practice English." Sarah smiled and said, "Welcome, Julia. Your help is very much appreciated." Practicing polite introductions and responses helps build confidence in social interactions. The first task was to help the children with a drawing and coloring activity. I joined a small group of kids sitting around a table with coloring sheets, pencils, and crayons. I greeted each child in English. Hello, my name is Julia. What is your name? They responded shyly, and I encouraged them. That's a nice name. What are you drawing? I practice using English to ask questions, give instructions, and praise their work. Good job! I like your colors. Keep going. Speaking clearly and slowly helps children understand and also improves my pronunciation and fluency. While helping the children, I describe their actions in my notebook. The children are coloring pictures of animals. One boy is drawing a dog. A girl is coloring a cat with purple and yellow. They are happy and smiling. They are sharing pencils and crayons. Writing detailed observations helps expand vocabulary for actions, colors, and emotions, while speaking aloud reinforces fluency. In conclusion, this lesson is designed to help you boost your fluency, improve your listening skills, and build confidence in real conversations. Remember, learning English is not about perfection, it's about progress, practice, and persistence. Stay consistent, keep practicing daily, and you'll see real results. If you found this episode helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more lessons from English Without Limit. Together, we'll take your English to the next level. Hey everyone, this is Julia from English Without Limit, and today we are going to practice English together. Let's start with a story you might enjoy. Yesterday, I woke up early because I wanted to go to the market. I made a cup of coffee and had a small breakfast. Then I put on my jacket and walked to the bus stop. On the way, I saw my neighbor walking her dog. I said hello to her, and she smiled. At the bus stop, I met a friend. We talked about our plans for the weekend. The bus came and we got on together. On the bus, I listened to music and watched people outside. Some children were playing in the park, and an old man was feeding birds. It was a calm morning. When I reached the market, it was already busy. People were buying fruits and vegetables, and the smell of fresh bread came from the bakery. I bought some apples, tomatoes, and a loaf of bread. I saw a woman selling flowers. The flowers were colorful and beautiful. I decided to buy a small bouquet. While paying, I asked her how much the flowers cost. She smiled and said $5. I gave her the money and thanked her. After shopping, I walked back home. I felt happy because I had fresh food and flowers for my kitchen. When I arrived home, I put everything away and made a small salad for lunch. Eating the salad, I thought about how small things like a morning walk and fresh flowers can make a day better. Then I cleaned the kitchen and relaxed with a cup of tea. I listened to a podcast in English to practice my listening skills. The day was simple but very pleasant. Later, I called my cousin to ask about her day. She told me she had a busy morning at work, but she also went for a short walk. We laughed and shared small stories about our friends. Talking to her made me feel cheerful. In the evening, I decided to go for a short walk in my neighborhood. The sun was setting, and the sky had beautiful colors. Some people were jogging, and some were walking their dogs. I walked slowly, enjoying the fresh air. I saw a little boy playing with a ball. His mother was sitting on a bench watching him. I smiled and remembered when I used to play in the park as a child. After the walk, I returned home and made dinner. I cooked rice and vegetables and had a quiet meal while listening to soft music. After dinner, I cleaned the. Hi, everyone.